Welcome to the Digital Lab and Beyond podcast, where we explore the intersection of technology, business, and innovation. Today, we're diving into the fascinating world of business processes in IT and scientific analysis. We'll explore how to optimize these processes, avoid common pitfalls, and align them with your business goals. Joining me today are two incredible experts in this field, Trisha St-Fleur, Associate Director of Consulting at Astrix, and Megan Bowman, Senior Product Manager at Semaphore Solutions. Today's episode will focus on three key areas: the role of business processes in IT implementations, business process modeling and optimization, what it is and why it matters, practical applications and lessons learned from real-world examples. By the end of this episode, you'll have actionable insights to evaluate and improve your own processes. So let's jump right in. Trisha and Megan, I'll turn it over to you.
Awesome. Thanks, Sam. Megan, let's start with the basics. Can you explain to our audience what business process modeling is and why it's so important?
Absolutely. So business process modeling is really the practice of mapping how work flows end to end so that teams can align on and also improve how outcomes are delivered. So if we just break that down a little bit and we think about how outcomes are delivered, right? So we want to ensure that our processes have meaning and that they're anchored in a target outcome or some type of value driver. And this allows us to really identify what processes truly influence that desired outcome. And then if we think about the alignment piece of that, we're trying to create a shared understanding of who does what as part of these processes that we're defining, what decisions are occurring throughout them, and what systems or tools are involved in them. And then that piece about looking at it end to end, we're mapping across handoffs, not keeping contained within functional silos. And this is where we really start to identify redundancies and even processes that don't necessarily contribute to that overall value we're trying to create. And I know, Trisha, in your own experience and working with your clients, you do a lot of process modeling. How would you describe the role of optimization within that process?
Oh, that's a really great question. So, optimizations takes process modeling to a step further by refining those processes to align with business objectives, improve efficiencies, and deliver better outcomes for the customer and the stakeholders. It's not just about making things faster, it's about making them smarter and more aligned with your goals. So the key around optimization is really trying to figure out what are the key business objectives of your customers.
Great. And if we think about this methodology from the role in business process, in IT specifically, IT implementations, I know, Trisha, you've worked on a lot of IT implementation projects. What are some of the common challenges that you've seen when it comes to aligning those business processes that you're mapping to like a new system, let's say?
Oh, yeah. One of the most often misconceptions that I came across is that implementing a system will automatically solve all problems. And it's kind of like retraining your customers or your clients to think differently, right? Because the reality is it's about how you use the system and whether it's aligned with your processes. So we want to do scientific focus, processes focus, and not necessarily like this system is going to solve everything.
Mm-hmm.
One of the biggest challenges I've seen is the balance between adapting processes to fit the system and customizing the system to fit existing processes. It's a dance, it's a delicate dance, and getting it wrong can lead to inefficiencies or even project failure or lack of adoption of the system.
Mm-hmm.
So, Megan, what about stakeholder engagements? I know you've seen some challenges in the area too.
Mm-hmm. Yes, so I would say stakeholder engagement is really a crucial aspect of any type of implementation. And this is an area where I have seen one of the biggest issues emerge that to the overall project success, right? And specifically not having the right stakeholders involved early enough in the project. For example, I've been on a project where we've gotten through the system build, right? And then at that point find out that there's a misalignment in expectation on the requirements. And it was because we didn't have the right people. The right people were not consulted throughout the process. Only at the end when we were ready to showcase the final deliverable, right? And so it's really critical to ensure that you have all of those stakeholders who need to be part of that definition involved early on. And I really think that this is one area where business process modeling really can be an excellent tool. It helps establish this alignment. As part of that definition, you're defining who needs to be involved for each part of those processes that you're mapping out. And so this then allows you to ensure that you have those stakeholders brought in early and that they're contributing to that definition. And so Trisha, how do you approach process mapping in these types of situations?
Well, kind of piggybacking on what you said, of course, identifying the stakeholders is so important. If you don't have the stakeholders, you don't have the right processes. So aside from identifying the right stakeholders, the current state process maps are invaluable. It's where you identify the pain points and the inefficiencies that are currently happening today with your clients. They help you understand where the gaps exist and what needs to change. Then you get into your future state process maps, and on that end, that should focus on addressing those gaps that you discovered in the current state process maps and aligning with the business objectives. They shouldn't look like they're the same process maps. Otherwise, you're not really improving anything.
Mm.
So Megan, let's dive a little deeper into process modeling and optimizations. Can you clarify the difference between BPMN and BPM for our listeners?
Of course. And I do smile because I know when I first delved into the world of process modeling, there are so many acronyms and a lot of them are overlapping. And so I think it's really good to, set the expectation around what each of these uniquely means. So BPM or business process management is a discipline that organizations will adopt. And this is where they're iteratively defining, improving, and managing those end-to-end processes aligned to that outcome, objective, or value driver that we've been talking about. BPM has a defined life cycle. The specifics of that life cycle will often vary depending on the organization. So different organizations will define their own specific life cycles to enable BPM based on their specific needs. Often this is really centralized around a life cycle of defining, modeling, executing, monitoring, and optimizing. And so going back to what you were just talking about, Trisha, with the current state and the future state, like we see that reflected in this overarching BPM life cycle. And what this really, the biggest value that this provides to organizations is that it allows them to close the gap between their operations and their value creation, because they're starting with that targeted outcome or value objective, and they're mapping these end-to-end processes to that. And then the life cycle is ensuring that there's always review and optimization of those processes. Whereas BPMN, or business process model and notation, is really a standard that is used where we're using flowchart style symbols to create those diagrams and workflow charts. So I see BPMN as the how, like a methodology of how we're doing some of those higher level BPM life cycle phases, like defining and modeling and executing. So I hope that helps clarify between the two terms. Trisha, how do you ensure that process improvements? So we talked about the life cycle a bit, and one part of that life cycle is that improvement piece. How do you ensure that the improvement is focused on delivering customer value?
Oh, that's a great point and question, Megan. It's important to start with the customer value itself, right? The customer and the stakeholders are the focus, and really diving into their objectives is key. Understanding their processes is also key to like keep the focus on what our end goal is. It's not just building a process, it's about improving outcomes for your clients. And so
Absolutely.
different ways we tend to do that is with the life cycle of BPM that you talked about earlier, such as process definition, iterative improvement and optimization. I want to spend a little time on that because that the processes should always evolve over time based on the feedback and the changing business needs. So I see process maps and um, business objectives as living documents that always evolve throughout time. And so whatever system is chosen to help with the solutioning, and again, solutioning could be a big picture thing, um, has to evolve with the business and this customer as well. We also have like root cause analysis, help underlining issues and causing inefficiencies or delays. It's asking why 5 different ways to the customers until you really get to the meat of it. Sometimes they just tell you the symptoms, but you have to delve deeper into understanding what is the root cause. And of course, investing in solutions, determining where to allocate resources to achieve the greatest impact. So Megan, what's your take on iterative improvement? How do you ensure processes don't become static?
Yeah, so that's a great question. And I'm going to again bring this back to that overarching BPM life cycle. And so this really does require adoption as a discipline, right? Because when we do that, we're creating a culture of continuous iterative improvement. And so I wanted to hone in specifically on the monitor phase of that life cycle. So we've defined our processes, we've executed our processes, and now we're at the point of monitoring them, right? So we're looking at the data that's coming out of the execution of those processes. So we're looking at some KPIs, we're looking at metrics, and we're comparing that data to what is our target outcome, what is our target value driver that we're shooting for, and where do we compare within that? And then that's really going to transition us into that optimization phase and to really focus, where do we need to further refine and further optimize this process? And I think that touches upon something you spoke about earlier, Trisha, around the pain points and identifying some of those inefficiencies, right? And so again, and now we're in this optimization phase. As part of that, we're going to define, okay, what parts of the process do we need to improve? What processes overall do we need to improve? And then that's continuing that cycle, that iterative cycle of defining, modeling. We're going to now model our new process, and then we're going to execute it and again monitor it, right? And so by truly embracing this life cycle, where this is how we're ensuring that our processes don't become stagnant or stale, and that we're continually ensuring that they remain aligned to that end value driver that we're shooting for. Yeah, so just thinking about this from a practical application, Trisha, can you share some lessons from your own consulting experience that really stand out to you?
Sure. One of the most valuable lessons I've learned is the importance of balancing system capabilities with process needs. It's always a give and take conversation that needs to happen. For example, I worked with a client who wanted to customize their system extensively. We had to take a step back and ask, is this customization really necessary? What is the ROI with customizing this particular process step? Or can we adapt the process instead? So it's finding that balance was key. I mean, it's hard conversations to have immediately, but necessary conversations in order to make sure that the system can grow with the customer long term and have longevity, instead of just kind of pigeonholing a system to fit a need that happens once in a blue moon, right?
Mhm.
So it's always that conversation that needs to happen with your clients. What about you? Any lessons from your time as a consultant and all the various different work that you've done?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to go back to the importance of stakeholder alignment, and really having that presence early in the process. It's so crucial, and I think a lot of times the most delays that I've seen on projects is really related to not having that presence early or having misalignment between stakeholders. And again, BPMN is a great tool to facilitate this. As you mentioned, there can be some uncomfortable conversations when we try to reach alignment. And by diagramming your processes and not just thinking about the flow of work, but who's involved, what systems are involved, what are the inputs and outputs of each of those, it's forcing some of those uncomfortable conversations to occur earlier in the process to gain that alignment, right? And so it's so much easier and better to have those conversations and to iron that out in just a diagram versus like a system build, right? So you're not building out, you're not investing into that bigger solution to find out that you haven't really reached alignment on your own processes. So yeah, that's really been one of the biggest lessons and takeaways I think that I've gained, is really ensuring that alignment upfront and early. And we've talked a lot about the value of process modeling. What advice would you give to organizations as they look to improve their processes?
That's a really good question. I would say start with a clear understanding of what your business objectives are and your desired outcomes. And like you mentioned earlier, engage with the right stakeholders early and often to ensure the alignment and the buy-in.
Mhm.
You know, that starting that early is going to definitely enable adoption later on. And of course, having your business process maps and management it's essential to make sure that we are looking at the correct solutions that will enable those desired outcomes.
Mhm.
Um, what about you? Any piece of advice?
Yeah, I mean, I think my advice is very, very similar to yours. Really start with that value driver or that desired outcome or higher level objective. So important. That allows you to reflect, to really understand what processes are truly going to influence that and who needs to be involved. And then as you start looking end to end at those processes, that's where you're going to say, these processes aren't really needed anymore. These are kind of overlapping or redundant, and these might even be negatively impacting that desired outcome. So I think it's so important to really start with that and then map to that end goal.
Yes, I 100% agree with that. And I do also want to mention, because you sparked something in me when you said that, is um, kind of going back to some topics that we've mentioned earlier, is having those difficult conversations
Mhm.
earlier and often. Maybe this one thing is actually not helping you towards your business
Mhm.
objectives. Yeah. Great points, great points. So, Megan, unfortunately, we're coming to the end of our conversation.
So fast.
So fast. I feel like I could talk to you all day. Um,
Same.
so, before we wrap up, Megan, what's one of the key takeaways you would like our listeners to remember?
Yes, absolutely. So I would say a key takeaway I would love everyone to have is BPM is more than just drawing diagrams. I think sometimes when we think about process modeling or process definition or business diagrams, we just think of we think of the diagram itself, right? And drawing that out and showing our process, but there's so much value behind it. It's more than just the diagram. And again, the key value really is aligning your operations to that value that you're looking to deliver as an organization. And this allows us to align our organizational resources, systems, and functions toward that value or desired outcome so that we're all in alignment and we're working towards that same goal. And this really ultimately creates that culture of continuous improvement. And Trisha, what about you? I'm sure you have some valuable key takeaway.
Yeah. So kind of piggybacking off of you around processes, they should never be static. And they should evolve with the customers. I think they're talking about the value behind process maps. There's huge benefits for the client to see their processes in black and white. It's a conversation starter. Sometimes, Department X had no idea what Department Y was doing. And so it's definitely essential to help the conversations. I would also mention around stakeholder engagement and iterative improvement are essential for success. And yeah, so those are my key takeaways. All right, so to our listeners, we encourage you to take a step back and evaluate your current processes. Are they aligned with your goals? Where are the gaps? And then start from there. Thanks for joining us today, everyone, and thank you for the great conversation, Megan.
Yes, you as well, Trisha. It's been really great talking again. I know we've talked previously on process, and it's something we're both very passionate about. So it's been great engaging again.
Thank you, Trisha and Megan, for such an insightful and engaging conversation today. You've given us a lot to think about when it comes to business process modeling optimization and aligning processes with business goals. To our listeners, we hope you found today's discussion valuable and that it inspires you to take a closer look at your own processes. Remember, success starts with understanding where you are, where you want to go, and involving the right people along the way. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with your network. We'd love to hear your thoughts and any questions you might have. Thanks for tuning in to the Digital Lab and Beyond podcast. Until next time, keep optimizing and driving meaningful changes in your business.